Let's jump right into this explainer. If you've been wanting to see exactly how enterprise app development has completely evolved lately, you are definitely in the right place. Today, we're really zoning in on modern project setup and those incredibly powerful CLI-based development processes that make .NET Core such a massive favorite right now. Let's get into it. We have a packed agenda today. First, the .NET Core revolution. Second, core architecture and MVC. Third, the middleware pipeline. Fourth, command line development. Fifth, structuring your project. And finally, number 6, code-first database setup. Section 1, the .NET Core revolution. So let's look at why the whole industry ran, not walked, away from the legacy framework. This wasn't just some minor patch, it was a total reimagining. In the past, the legacy .NET framework was, well, kind of a dinosaur. It was strictly Windows only, closed source, and heavy. You had to load these massive monolithic libraries even for the simplest tasks. But modern .NET Core, it totally flips the script. It's cross-platform, so you can code on a Mac, deploy on Linux, use Docker containers, whatever you want. Plus, it's open source, ridiculously fast, and totally modular. You only grab the specific packages you actually need. And looking ahead to 2026, mastering this unified platform is an absolute must-have for your career. With versions like .NET 8, 9, and the upcoming 10 running the enterprise world, knowing how to leverage this ecosystem, which seamlessly blends web, mobile, desktop, and cloud development, is honestly a huge competitive advantage. Section 2, Core Architecture and MVC. Before we start typing out terminal commands, we need to quickly map out the 4 structural layers that actually make all this cross-platform magic work. At the very top, you've got the application layer. That's where your web apps or APIs live. Right underneath is the base class library, giving you the essential APIs for things like file inputs and outputs or database connections. Below that is the core runtime. That's your just-in-time compiler and garbage collector doing the heavy lifting for memory and execution automatically. And at the base, the operating system. Thanks to this modern setup, that base can literally be Windows, Linux, or Mac OS. Now, to keep everything organized and highly scalable, modern .NET Core relies heavily on the MVC, or Model View Controller pattern. Think of the controller as the brain intercepting requests. The model is your business logic and data. And the view? That handles making the UI look good. By splitting it up like this, your team can work on the exact same project without stepping on each other's toes. No more messy, tangled code. Section 3, the middleware pipeline. What's really fascinating here is how a user request actually travels through the system. It's completely different from the old days. Think of it like a highly efficient assembly line. Our browser sends a request, and instead of crashing straight into your database, it enters the middleware pipeline. From there, it hits a routing mechanism that finds the right controller, grabs the data via the model, hands it to the view for formatting, and boom, an HTML response is shipped right back up the chain to the user.
The key takeaway? Middleware is the ultimate middleman, doing all the heavy lifting for every single HTTP request. Want to add user authentication? Just plug in a middleware. Need to serve static images? That's a middleware too. It sits perfectly between the request and the response, giving you total power to intercept, modify, or even block traffic on the fly. Section 4, Command Line Development.
This brings us to what I think is the most exciting shift, how developer workflows have radically modernized. We are officially ditching those clunky visual click and drag wizards. If you've spent any time working in Node, React, or Angular, you know the drill. You do everything from the terminal. Well, modern .NET has fully embraced that exact same CLI-first agility. Your terminal is your best friend now. You have absolute control right from your command line to execute your core tasks instantly. Want to scaffold a brand new MVC project from scratch? There's a simple command for that. Need to compile your code, spin up a local server, publish a release build, or pull in some third-party NuGet packages? You can do it all without ever touching your mouse. It is incredibly streamlined and fits perfectly into any modern deployment workflow. Section 5, Structuring your project. So, what actually happens when you run that CLI command to scaffold a new project? You get this beautifully organized folder structure, and understanding it is absolutely crucial. The www root folder is the designated home for all your static assets, your CSS, JavaScript, images, the whole shebang. Then you've got your dedicated folders for controllers, models, and views. But the real star of the show is a file sitting right at the root called program.cs. Program.cs is essentially the central nervous system of your app. Gone are the days of juggling half a dozen messy XML configuration files.
This one single file is the entry point where you register your database connections, set up that middleware pipeline we talked about, and configure your routing logic. It is clean, centralized, and so much easier to read.
Another massive architectural upgrade here is dependency injection, or DI, which is now baked natively into the framework. This is a game changer for keeping your code modular and testable. Instead of a controller having to manually create its own database service, which creates really rigid, brittle code, program.cs simply injects that required service straight into the controller. Need to change how that service works later? You literally only have to update it in one single place. Section 6, Code First Database Setup. Let's wrap up by looking at how we handle our data layer, because great application logic needs a great place to store data. With the Entity Framework Code First approach, you don't even have to write raw SQL queries anymore. You just write your C# classes like a customer or product model, and the framework dynamically generates the actual relational database tables for you. It's almost like magic, seamlessly bridging your C# code with your database. Setting this up is just a matter of running a few quick commands in your CLI. You pull down the Entity Framework core packages, and then you jump into your app settings.json file, which has totally replaced the old web.config file to safely store your connection strings. Once you register everything back in program.cs, your app is fully wired up to talk to the database, completely driven by your code. So, with all this cross-platform power and CLI agility at your fingertips, what are you going to build in .NET Core next? We've seen how this modern ecosystem totally sheds the baggage of the past, giving us a lightning-fast, terminal-driven, and beautifully structured way to create apps. You now have the exact blueprint for setting up and executing your own projects. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. Now go fire up that terminal and start building!